I love leveling in World of Warcraft. For me personally, it provides such a unique experience that no other MMORPG out there can truthfully replicate. How y'all doing? Holy City WoW here, creator of the Let's Level series. Thought we would do a little bit of an off-the-cuff style video, taking a small breather from the multitude of characters I'm currently leveling on the channel, to discuss and talk about why I love leveling and why it matters. Like, what, out of all the different elements of Warcraft, all the different endgame, from questing to endgame to transmog competitions and events and all that, why do I focus primarily on the leveling aspect? It's a topic that I've kind of wanted to discuss for a little bit, and I don't necessarily do well with structured based content in terms of commentary where it feels like I'm reading off of a script. I don't like doing that, so I'm not going to do it here. So we're just going to go off the rip and delve into why I really enjoy leveling. I'm sure many of you out there truthfully feel the same, but Warcraft provides such a unique experience that from every element of this game, regardless if it's the endgame content, the transmog competitions, the in-game events, world questing, expansion storylines, why dungeons and why leveling? And I think to better understand this, we have to go back to my early days of first delving into MMOs. Now, for those of you that don't know, I was never an MMORPG player. I did not mind playing RPGs. I was quite fond of them, but at the time when I started to delve into MMOs, I delved into more of the EverQuest style. So in this case, Final Fantasy XI. That was easily, still to this day, it's the MMORPG that I've had the most experience with. I could pretty much tell you anything about that game. I've studied it, played it so long, years on and off, that I just had such a tremendous passion for it. And prior to, I was a competitive gamer. I was competing in MLG-based events, specifically for Halo. I was always more of an FPS gamer, and the like. When I delved and I finally got into MMOs, FF11 was truly like a completely different world that I was not familiar with. But I started to the more I got used to it and accustomed to it, I would start to look at other players in the game. You know, when you jump into an MMO and you start to see all the different classes and all the different equipment and, you know, end game related gear, you tend to sit there and go, I really want to do that, or I want to try that class, or I want to experience some of what that player's experienced, or try to, you know, make that experience my own. And when I finally delved into World of Warcraft side of life, it was coming up on the tail end, middle to tail end of Wrath of the Lich King's expansion. I mean, I did play Classic and Burning Crusade, but I really was really on and off and on. Wrath of the Lich King was kind of the expansion where I really started to hone in and focus a little bit more, actually get to play with friends and give it a fair chance. And when Dungeon Finder came out, when that was finally implemented, it was a huge game changer. Prior to, you had to actually go to every single dungeon. You had to go to the meeting stones and meet up with the players. And while that was a good experience, it was I found it to be incredibly, how would we say? It would be such a time sink. I'd feel like I wouldn't be able to accomplish as much in a day as I would like to. Now in FF11, and I'm sure in games such as EverQuest, it probably was about the same. But at the time, I didn't see that distinct connection. I didn't make that connection to, hey, you have to do that in FF11 as well. But the traveling is a little bit quicker depending on if you have, you know, the respective teleports and such. And in World of Warcraft, it was the Hearthstone. So when Dungeon Finder came out and we were able to queue up for dungeons, we can queue up for pretty much anything. It was a huge game changer. Then we started to see more players out there get to level like a multitude of alts, because back then you would just focus on pretty much one, maybe 2 or 3 characters. Yeah, you can definitely, people were leveling alts, but it wasn't to the fast pace that it feels like today. Needless to say, Dungeon Finder was a huge game changer for many of us. I mean, when it came out, and imagine now, instead of going to a meeting stone, you can queue up for Nomergan, you can queue up for the Stockade and do those Stockade runs. You can go up and queue for Black Fathom Deeps, and arena runs got so much faster. All these different quality of life changes that would soon be implemented gradually over the years of Warcraft. Some I was around for, most of them I was not. Coming back into retail and getting to experience how leveling is now is, for me, a huge, not just game changer, but for the adulthood side of myself in comparison to the younger side, where we have so much time, to commit to gaming. Now as a father, first responder, full-time college student, for full-time pretty much a lot of different things, husband included, you don't have as much time to commit. Dungeon Finder to me is still one of the many reasons I keep coming back to this game. Not only that, but just the different dungeons, the different leveling routes you can take, the elements of each of these core mechanics of the game help keep everything feeling fresh. And no 2 characters that I level are ever going to take the same exact leveling path, regardless of the formula that I have in turn created for each character, if that makes sense. Certain time walking campaigns come out. There's, time walking for classic dungeons, or the true classic iterations, then you have the Cataclysm, the revamped dungeons, Mists of Pandaria, all these different things, all while still being able to get to experience the classic elements of old school World of Warcraft, getting to do the world quests, the revamped, the more streamlined world quests as I call them, getting to hunt rares and getting to hunt elites and solo a lot of this content if you wish. It's all just, in my opinion, fantastic, and why I really enjoy the leveling experience as it currently stands. But let's take a moment to also go back and pay some homage to what it meant to level in Classic. Classic World of Warcraft is a journey from beginning to end that is meant to be taken in small increments, not all at once. There's beauty in simplicity, and what I mean by that is Classic did a really good job of allowing the player to breathe and understand the world around them, get to understand the lore behind the race that they have selected, while also understanding the little various intricacies of their class that they have chosen, learning the strengths and weaknesses, what they can do, what they cannot do, and then eventually understanding some tricks of the trade and just little things mechanically in the game that were discovered and may or may not have actually been intended, so to speak. The Classic has a very good foundation to it. You can definitely see and still feel to this day when you get on Classic Anniversary, the old EverQuest blueprint is still there, and it definitely feels like so. One element that often gets brought up, or one argument, that often gets brought up, is how the world of Azeroth feels between Classic and Modern and Retail. Whereas in Classic days, we had to actually group to do a lot of content to finish certain quest storyline chains, such as Mor Ladim, I believe his name was, in Duskwood, getting to hunt Stitches for the first time, getting to Stranglethorn Vale and kind of farm those multitude of pages, all that fun stuff. Classic allowed for open communication and transparency between players. Even in dungeons, the tank and the healer definitely have to communicate and be on the same length. Even for the DPS, for the damage dealers, everybody has to understand what task they're given. Everyone has to understand what key they play in the team, because one wrong pull can absolutely cause a wipe. This is even more prevalent in certain dungeons, such as Black Fathom Deeps. Definitely could be the first, one of the first major ones. Dead Mines, even I'd argue. Black Rock Depths, definitely Black Rock Depths, especially if you're not doing just the arena runs. The tank, the healer, the team, the synergy has to be on point. And every player took the time to travel. This again, talking about those days where we didn't have Dungeon Finder. We only had Group Finder. Okay, we can get a group together, but everyone still has to travel to the specific destination. Everyone's taking time out of their questing. And questing is an important role in the leveling experience in Classic, because oftentimes the chains that you start end in a dungeon, or they introduce you eventually to a raid, i.e. your attunement quests, and so on and so forth. I understand that the current argument that gets brought up about Classic's world feels like a world. And I totally understand that from the veteran player's perspective. There's more communication. The auction house definitely feels alive most of the time. Players want to group because there's a goal. Everyone has their own little goals that they're trying to achieve, but I would argue, and it's probably certainly server dependent, I've definitely had that same familiar experience that most would argue probably doesn't exist in modern and retail. One of the problems with retail current that I feel is that it pushes so much content to a new player's eyes. It just tries to throw you to the end game way, way, way too quickly. There's a good side to that, and there's a big catch-22 to all of it. It doesn't allow the player to just take a moment and breathe. Classic does a really, really good job of that. The open world leveling is definitely slow. The open world leveling in retail is definitely a little bit on the slower side, but the more you do it, the faster it gets. Between all the different quality of life improvements that they've made over the years has definitely made retail a king in terms of a leveling experience. No two characters you'll ever create are going to have that same journey. You may cross into the same zone. You may still do the same questing or escort quests, or go hunt the go get save the robot chicken, and so on and so forth. And there's definitely a good sense of nostalgia to it all. That same go save the chicken and the robot chicken in Tenaris. Well, guess what? You can go back to Classic and do that same exact thing and be like, oh, I remember this. It's all unique. It really, really is a very much unique experience. Open world questing in Classic definitely is the king, and definitely is superior to retail for sure. No doubt about that. Dungeons definitely are the king in retail. If you do a hour's worth of dungeons in retail and modern, you're certainly going to pack a few levels in, versus if you do that in Classic, it's not the case. You really have to combine questing with the dungeons to maximize your gains, so to speak. You can absolutely run Dead Mines over and over. You can run those do those old school stockade runs over and over. You can do Black Rock Depths over and over. Certainly, you can do all this. You can absolutely do that. You can tailor the experience to your needs, or to the group's needs. But you're going to miss out if you're doing that in Classic, because again, by design, you're meant to really travel the world of Azeroth. You're meant to, for the Alliance players, for my Alliance family, you're meant to go from the Alliance territories into the Horde territories and then to the contested zones. Same thing for the Horde. You're meant to do all of these things. Open world questing truly matters in Classic, and you're missing out if you don't do that. Now, one would argue, well, I've done it before, I've done it so many times, and it just gets boring after a while, and I can understand that, but you just try to keep in. One thing I like to do, in regardless of the any version of the game that I'm playing, is keep an open mind and try to understand the differences between each version. For every Warcraft player, think about when you first created that character. What was your feeling when you did? For my Night Owl family, when you first created the character and then you finally got to the gates of Darnassus, or for the human side, for my human family out there, when you first got to Stormwind and you got blasted by all that Stormwind Intensifies music, or for my Forsaken family, when you finally got to the Undercity, and then you got to experience the elevator and go all the way down, and then you see the skeletons and you're like, what is that? What are the skeletons on the elevator? Like, what's that all about? The tradition of Warcraft is, I just don't think it can be replicated, in my opinion. I think the traditional elements of World of Warcraft really makes it stand out, even in comparison to Final Fantasy as it stands. And this is coming from somebody that's played Final Fantasy 11 to the T and then played 14 even prior to A Realm Reborn. I just think that Warcraft has such a voice to it and such a character, such a, it's such a package. It's such a unique package that's it's got a very simple presentation to it, but the inner workings of each chapter is it's just a phenomenal experience from top to bottom. And again, that's going to depend on the expansion that everyone's favorite expansions are going to be different, but especially for leveling and especially for the quality of life changes, one can argue, or one can make the argument that no one does it better than World of Warcraft, in my humble opinion. For myself personally, I was never a hardcore raider in World of Warcraft. That simply was never the case. There was something about having to gather a massive group of about 40 or 20 people just didn't really appeal to me. Dungeons were always there though, and I love getting to go back and experience all the different iterations of dungeons, especially in various iterations of the game's history. If I one day I can just jump in on modern or current day retail and I can go to any of the classic dungeons, I can queue for any of the classic dungeons, and there's always players looking to experience those, especially when time walking campaigns are around. But even in versions of the game such as Mists of Pandaria, getting to experience what each class can do, getting to experience the talent trees, having to really research and study the respective builds, and then just getting to experience, hey, let's not go with a meta-based build, let's just experiment, let's just have fun with it. Getting that sense of freedom from the game in its current iteration is just an experience that you can't get, in my opinion, anywhere else as it currently stands. Getting to experience old school Shadowfang Keep and then jumping into Mists of Pandaria and getting to see, well, what's the differences here? Getting to see what the bosses are. Like, there's actual story progressions, the Barons and Godfrey and everything else, whereas back in classic, you're fighting against, the Sons of Aragorn and such. It's just unique. And I think that another reason why I love dungeoning so much is just getting to see those little differences, getting to experience them in one timeline, so to speak, and then getting to go back and experience it again. No two characters, and I know I keep saying this, but no two characters journey is ever going to be the same. And also getting to experience various aspects of the community, getting to experience members of the community that specifically like a specific version of the game and really play that, and they know the routes to take, they know what to look for. Getting to just pick their brains a little bit, getting to kind of talk and say, hey, you know, why did we run this route? Or, hey, what's your build like? Just those differences really help me keep coming back to World of Warcraft, regardless of how many times it may seem like you're overlapping content. Like if you do a lot of the content in current day retail, you know, you do a lot of the leveling and such, the early grinding, the world quests and such, you're going to go back, let's say now, and play Mists of Pandaria, and you're basically going to the same zones. You're going through the same content. At one point in time, you're just going to be kind of reiterating the same stuff. Now, I know what many of you are thinking. Redundancy in doing the same thing over and over again. You know, if you leveled a character in modern and retail, and then you jump into, let's say, Mists of Pandaria, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of similarities outside of the, you know, various differences and such, but there's definitely going to be a lot of overlap. There's definitely going to be a lot of just general redundancy. And my argument to that is I'm a very goal-oriented person. I like consistency in what I do. And when I'm taken out of consistency, that's when I tend to just not bode well, you know. Warcraft has definitely allowed me to jump out of that comfort zone. It's allowed myself to create a level of self-expression. What I mean by that is I can jump into any version of the game at any point in time, and I can get to see the various differences, the various little intricacies and such. You know, getting to experience Shadowfang Keep in the classic sense, and then jumping into Mists of Pandaria and getting to see, well, the difference of bosses, getting to see the story evolutions, the dungeon quests, the various little changes that really make each playthrough unique. I definitely say this a lot, and I do apologize. I'm starting to sound a little redundant myself, but no two characters' journey is ever the same. If I ever find myself stuck, or if I ever find myself just getting bored of leveling a character, because at this point I've leveled 7 level 80s on the Let's Level retail series. 7 level 80s back to back. There's very little stop. You know, there's very little rest in between each character. One way to break up the monotony, one way to get to experiment with different play styles, or get to theory craft what areas can I go to that can break up the leveling a little bit, or what can I do differently. I just watch creators. Watch other World of Warcraft creators. The first one that comes to mind is Robert Rambles, and he's done a phenomenal job of leveling a multitude of different characters and tunes. I'll go back to his oldest videos. I'll go back to his very first Night Elf that he leveled, and just watch that leveling campaign and just study it a little bit. Not in the sense of studying as if I'm studying for a test, but what can I take from this player? What can I take from this member of the community and implement some of what they do into my own style, like into my own gameplay? What can I take from this playthrough and such? One of my personal favorites that he's done as of recent, and that he's recently just came back to, is the Classic Anniversary Warrior, the female warrior that he was leveling. Easily my favorite playthrough thus far. But I'll even go back as far as to watch some of the Cataclysm stuff, the Mists of Pandaria stuff, content that he did. You know, just any little thing that I can watch. Because who knows, maybe that will in turn inspire you to just try something different. I don't like gnomes. I don't like gnomes. I think I make that very clear. But at some point, I'm going to level a gnome because I just want to do something different. I want to give that race and that community, that part of the community, I want to give them their just dues. And maybe, who knows, maybe I'll end up liking them, or maybe I'll have a lot of validation in saying that, they should permanently lose Gnomergan. Just fun little jab right there. Or maybe I'll just sit there and say, yeah, the Worgans suck and they should have lost Gilneas, but that's just, all love to my Worgan family. Nothing but love to y'all too. But yeah, watching other creators seriously helps me. It helps me identify little things in my gameplay that I can do differently. Another creator that I watch on the regular is Undead Adam. A member of the Void Fam and everything for the channel, but he's very storyline driven. He likes to go through the quests. He likes to showcase, whereas, myself and I'd say, Rambles, we like to do a lot of the dungeons. Anytime we can get into a dungeon, we're doing a dungeon, but Undead Adam has a very different approach to it. He's very much heavy on the lore, heavy on the chill and relaxing gameplay, and the challenge runs too. Another good element right now of diversifying a leveling journey is trying something unique, trying something challenging. And in Classic right now, you have the ability to do that with hardcore playthroughs, and those are very, very popular, and they're very fun from what I've heard. I'm not a hardcore player by any stretch of the imagination, but even I can find the fun, the entertainment in doing a playthrough, in which case knowing that one mistake and that's it, that's the end of that character's journey. There's definitely some fun in that. Another creator for sure would be Azeroth Dan. He's very much on the comedy. He very much has a nice sense of humor, and he could be doing the most boredom, monotonous task of just, hey, we're just going to go travel to various points in Azeroth, and I'm just going to show you guys a secret little area. It has nothing to do with leveling. It has nothing to do with questing. None of that. There's no general excitement, but I'm just going to show you this one part of the map that most of you probably haven't never seen before. And to me, that's exciting. That's so fun. A leveling journey isn't just about going into dungeons necessarily. It's not necessarily about maximizing those gains, those individual gains that you're going to get at some point regardless. It's about having fun, but experiencing every element of Azeroth that you can. Because the more you open your mind to everything around you, the better and more fun the game truly becomes. And I think that's part of the end game that a lot of us haven't truly unlocked yet. It's not the transmogs. It's not the level cap speed run to the speed run to level 80. It's none of that. Though all that stuff is cool. It's about leveling and understanding the journey itself. Making the journey truly ours. If there's one key message I would like to convey to y'all, one key takeaway point in this entire video, is try every version of the game. Take advantage of that subscription that you, myself, and many others out there in the world are paying for. World of Warcraft, in my opinion, is truly going through a renaissance period in the fact that you can play different versions of the game. That's insane. That's almost a privilege that I will never take for granted. The whole point of the Let's Level series, for instance, is getting to level all these different classes, different race every time, or at least most of the time, get to have fun and experiment with different class and race combinations, get to blueprint which different zones I'm going to go to, what makes sense for this character, how can I make this playthrough entertaining, because especially with the class homogenization. You know, how do you showcase the different, the really different key points of each class while still highlighting the key benefits of said class, or the key negatives, showcase both sides of the story. All of this really helps me understand the fundamentals of leveling in World of Warcraft. It helps me get a better understanding of the goal, the task at hand, and how do I want to approach said task? How do I want to tackle this character? You know, which chromie time do I want to get to level this character in? What makes sense? Is there, you know, in the real world, is there a holiday coming around the corner? You know, which month is it? You know, all these little different intricacies that I take into account when deciding what class or what character to do next. And all of this is just simply to say that I really enjoy leveling in World of Warcraft. It is such a unique experience that I simply put could not get with any other MMO. And that's definitely not to say that Final Fantasy or Guild Wars or just any other MMO out there is bad in terms of conveying or presenting such a unique leveling experience. Every MMO has its positives and its negatives. But Warcraft has definitely stood out to me. It's definitely allowed me a freedom of expression and allowing me to develop on a content creation creativity. Like, it's allowed me so much. And like I said, I'm very thankful for it. I'm very thankful for the game itself, the community itself, because there's such a kick-ass element to the community. I mean, there's definitely a huge traditional side to it as well, which I'm very appreciative of. With all that being said, Shukran, thank you so much for tuning in to this kind of off the beaten path, off the cuff, rambling style of video. Definitely something that is out of my norm, so to speak, but I figured it would be a good idea to just highlight what my thought process is with how I approach leveling various characters in this game, kind of like how I go about the blueprinting, and just what are some reasons why I continuously go back and just level characters back to back, and why I enjoy it, really. Like I said, World of Warcraft has provided me an experience unlike any other, and I'm very much appreciative of that. Very much also appreciative of members of the Void fam of the channel. If you would like, definitely check out all the characters that we've leveled thus far on their respective leveling campaigns. You can check those out on the various playlists, which is on the homepage of this channel. And I hope to maybe have inspired some of y'all to start your own Let's Leveling journey, start your own leveling campaign, so to speak. I definitely would like to see more WoW creators in this space, especially approach the old school Let's Play style tradition of just going through the game, or maybe just showcasing the storylines or questing or whatever, wherever your journey is going to take you. I hope this video inspires you, at the minimum, to try World of Warcraft if you're not already playing. But thank you so much, family. Shukran as always, and I will catch y'all as we continue our leveling campaign in Legion Remix with our Demon Hunter and all the characters yet to come. Shukran, family. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.